Hello there, Crafty Doer. Jessica Michaels here with the weekly project post. For this week's project, I wanted to play with a little texture, so I opted for 3 main mediums amongst other mediums: texture paste, foundry wax, and stencil butter. So stick around to see the unique ways that you too can use these mediums in ways they were not intended to be used. And also please subscribe to my channel for more content like this one and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more content like this one. Here's how it went. In my last video, I shared one of my favorite techniques that I like to use in my craft room, which is ink smooshing. I mentioned that I personally like to use my media mat when I ink smoosh, but that you don't necessarily need a media mat to use this fun technique. And I'm here to show you that it's possible to get similar results. For this card, I am using a piece of plastic that was once the packaging for some ephemera that I have. And you can see that I am able to create both looks, the speckled and also the watercolor effect. In order to get the speckled, you just don't add as much as water as you will to get the watercolor effect. Essentially, what you're doing is just picking up the ink on the plastic, and when you smoosh it down on your paper, that's how you get all the little speckles. And the same goes with the ink that has more water on it. You're picking it up with your plastic and smooshing it down on your cardstock. Easier, I think, way to do ink smooshing because you have more control than you would putting your cardstock face down on the ink, lifting it up, and then just getting what you get. You can see where you want to put your ink. So if you're a control freak like I am in my craft room sometimes, I opt for this method. Again, because I can kind of see where I can put the ink where it's going to go. So you won't ever hear me not tell you that in order to get beautiful results, it is very important for you to dry in between your layers. Otherwise, you are going to get a mushy mess. And if you're not using like heavy cardstock or high quality like watercolor paper, you're going to start to get water seep through your paper and just start to get tears. So you see me using my heat air drying tool to dry in between layers. And I wanted to add a little bit more of that old paper color in distress ink. So after drying that final layer, I just grab my paintbrush and do a little splattering with that. I grabbed this gorgeous little bee, a part of this stamp collection by Stampers Anonymous. I wanted the bee to kind of blend in with the background. And so what I do is I spritz it a little bit after getting some ink on the stamp. When I stamp the image onto the cardstock, it starts to blend in with the wild honey that's already smooshed in there. And that's exactly what I wanted. So I do that a few times, and then I realize that it's not as blended as I wanted to because there's not a lot of that wild honey coming through in the background. So I smooshed a little bit of Distress Oxide in the wild honey on my glass working surface to start splattering around and on top of the bees. When I stamped those images, I did take into consideration where I kind of wanted my clusters, because that is what we're kind of doing here. And that is what that is where I'm going to build my texture. So again, just kind of keeping in mind where I'm going to want those clusters is where I stamp the bee images. I reached for my spray stain and rusty hinge because that wild honey wasn't popping through as much as I wanted to. And I really wanted those bees to blend in to the background. So I just added a little more splattering with the rusty hinge and spray stain. And I feel like it helped a bit. So foundry wax, that is the first main medium of this card, is a super cool medium. I love it so much. It comes in that tiny little bottle, but A little goes a long way, and it comes in a liquid form. So you have to shake it up until you hear the little bottle rattle in there because it's mixing everything up in there. So I had some previous foundry wax left over from another project, and you saw that I poured it on my glassworking surface as a powder, and that's what it does. So it comes out as liquid. You have to work fast because it will dry to powder. In between, you get a paste. The cool thing about this is that if you're not a fast worker, you can add a little bit of alcohol, and you get it back to its liquid form. So instead of wiping that all off and letting it all go to waste, I let it dry into a powder. I pick it up, and then I save it for later. So the really cool thing about, I think, this foundry wax is that you pretty much get like 3 products in one, I feel. So next I'm going to grab Ranger's transparent or gloss. This is a really cool texture paste. I have used it in other projects. I will have it linked down below. I used it differently in that last project. I used it as a resistant. So I did a resist technique with the texture paste transparent gloss. For this card, I'm using it for its transparency and its gloss. Because I didn't want to hide our beautiful background that we spend so much time doing. And also because you can get so much dimension if you layer it on thick, and that's just what I did. So now I'm going to grab my heat air drying tool, and I'm going to start to heat this. And usually you don't have to, but because of the technique that I'm using, I want to overheat the paste because then it'll start to bubble. And that is my goal. I want to create dimension and texture with this gloss by overheating it and creating luscious bubbles. I reach over for some more rusty hinge with my paintbrush just to add some shadow around the honeycomb stencil that I didn't even mention I used, but it's from Stampers Anonymous as well. And when I add a little bit of the rusty hinge, not only does it bring out, I think, the splatters, but it brings out the bee stamped images. And then it just adds more to the cluster that I'm creating. So add a little bit of alcohol to my dried foundry wax, and I get the liquid form again. But this time I'm using it as paste. So I drop a little bit around the little clusters that I'm creating, and I use my finger just to kind of move it around, smoosh it around, and just, get it perfectly where I wanted. You do have to heat set foundry wax, and just look at those clusters. Look at the gloss and just the shimmer from the foundry wax. I'm in love. Next, I'm going to grab that same bee stamp, and I'm going to stamp an image using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink. It is the one that I love to use when I do stamp some images because it stamps so clean and so crisp. When I did stamp it the first time, I got a little bit of a smudge, and so I had to redo it again. But this was a very happy accident because I noticed that when I adhered my bead onto my card, after I fussy cut, you can see the back of the stamped image. And so I was very happy that you could see, the oopsie stamped image. So I was very happy about that accident. Happy accidents in the craft room today. So before I fussy cut, I added just a little bit of the colors that I had on my glassworking surface. Just spritz some water over it because they were a little bit dried, and then just add that a little bit to my bee. The second medium I chose to highlight for this video is stencil butter, and I used even though I used a tiny bit. This stuff is magical. You can obviously use it as is stencil butter, and you grab your stencil and you get your palette knife and you do the whole 9 yards. You could splatter it. I like to use it as shimmer a lot. And so you get that tiny, tiny bit, you water it down, and then I applied it to the wings of my bee, and it gave this just beautiful shimmer. I ran my card through my sewing machine for a little black stitching, and I ran out of black thread. That's why you see that empty space in the middle. That wasn't on purpose, but I opted for cherry foam tape to adhere. I used my Cricut to design this sentiment, but I used the print and cut feature on my Cricut, and then I opt for cherry foam tape to adhere it. Here's my little box of random sequin that I find or I get in like birthday cards or just, Happy Meal from my cherry friends. And yeah, I sit there and I divide it all up, categorize it, organize it. And now I have sequin for projects. So I couldn't tell you where they're from, what collection, or which ones went together. But I had these tiny, adorable little red hearts that I end up putting at the end of the card. You won't see me do it. So thanks for watching. Let me know down below if these mediums are any ones that you've used before. Have you used them any differently than I used them, or any differently than they're intended to be used? Have you burned your house down from trying to, I'm just kidding. But I'd love to try any of your techniques if you have any new ones. And as usual, the supply list for the products I used in this project are in this description box below. I do appreciate when you use those links to make any purchases, as I do earn a small commission from my recommendation of those products to you. I'd be so, so grateful if you subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Thanks so much for popping in. Remember that you create because you were fearfully and wonderfully created. Don't forget that you belong, even if paper crafting isn't your thing.